Welcome to WCGO 1590 AM on Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk. Happy Independence Day. Happy 4th of July, everybody. We have a great guest today, Mr. David Shestokas, here to talk about his book, Creating the Declaration of Independence. What do you hear? What do you say, Dave?
It's great to be with you. This is almost my favorite time of the year. I've been sharing some things. This will be the 7th different show that I've done during the course of this week. I was on Cities 92.9 down in Bloomington Normal. I was with John Hanson on WGN yesterday, and I've been with on American Media Periscope. I was with Chosen Generation Radio. Oh, nice. We've been all over the country talking about the Declaration of Independence and the things that we should be recognizing, why we celebrate the Declaration of Independence. This perhaps should be the singular most important holiday because what it celebrates is the singular most important political document in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And so it's great to be with you. And I'm finishing up this is almost like my Christmas because I love this, and I've been a student of it for many, many years. Wrote this book, Creating the Declaration of Independence. Mm-hmm. For those of you on Facebook, we're showing the book right at the moment. Available on Amazon and in both Kindle and whatnot. And as I was talking with John Hanson yesterday, if in fact there's a bookstore near you that doesn't have it, tell them to get it. They can in fact order it. That book is available to them. It's in catalogs. They can get it in the bookstore. So help me get it in the bookstore. That'll be great because you'll be doing a service not just for me, but hopefully for America, because we don't teach the Declaration of Independence the way we should. So we're going to talk about that for the next hour or so.
I would love to talk about Thomas Jefferson. Where did he get the idea of creating the Declaration of Independence? Where was that idea?
Well, Jefferson pretty much was a student of history, the way many of the founders were. Mm-hmm. They were classically trained in languages, Latin and Greek, and Latin and Greek history, and beyond all that. And when he got talked into writing the Declaration of Independence by John Adams, he actually didn't want to write it. We'll get there before it's all over. But once John Adams talked Thomas Jefferson into doing it, Jefferson set about doing it by kind of going through his historical knowledge and seeing what had happened in history when the people determined that they were going to get rid of a king, because this is what they were going to do. So he was looking for historical precedent for how to approach getting rid of a king. Mm-hmm. Frankly, he went among the places he started was in 1215. There was an English document issued called the Magna Carta. That's a fancy Latin term for big paper. Okay. It doesn't sound so fancy in English as it sounds in Latin. In Latin's Magna Carta, which is, but in English it translates as big paper because it was the year 1215. The King of England was a fellow by the name of John, and King John had lost some recent wars to France, and so he was trying to tax his barons to raise money to pay for the war that he just lost, because he had a lot of debt left over from that. The barons were not very happy about King John trying to do that, and so they actually kidnapped King John. The English barons in the countryside who had their little fiefdoms, if you will, all over. And they took John to a place and they said, "Listen, John, we'll go along with your taxes, but the fact is we want you to do some things for us." Mm-hmm. And among them is they established what they call no man should be convicted of a crime except by the law of the land. That has now come into our Constitution as due process of law. So we can actually trace the historical meaning of due process of law to the Magna Carta from 1215.
Very interesting.
But there was more to that, because they said, besides all that, we don't want you deciding everything all by yourself. Mm-hmm. So they put together a thing. If somebody's going to be accused of a crime, we want we're going to get a group of barons together. You're going to come over, you're going to give the evidence to the barons, and the barons are going to decide whether or not we should proceed on the crime. Today we call that a grand jury. Mm-hmm. So that goes back to the grand jury. The grand jury that we have goes back to that, and the probable cause and due process. A lot of things can be traced to the Magna Carta, and but the situation is that, of course, the colonists in the United States, while at those times the colonies in America,
right,
weren't happy with the king. And so they're trying to, and declaring independence is essentially either reining in the king's power or getting rid of the king. And so this is where Jefferson started, by studying things that had happened through history about the king, about getting rid of the king. The Magna Carta started about another 125 years after that. There was something called the Declaration of Aberoth that he took into account. And that was, we now have a famous movie related to that called Braveheart.
Oh, I love that movie.
Braveheart is a fantastic movie. There's, and of course you got freedom, right?
Right.
And so nobody does freedom like Mel Gibson. But the Declaration of Aberoth was where the Scotsman said, no, the King of England is not going to be our king, but rather Robert the Bruce is going to be our king. And so they issued a document called the Declaration of Aberoth. About another 150 years later or so, there was another declaration by the folks in the Netherlands where they got rid of the Dutch king. And the Dutch king, but when they got rid of the Dutch king, they brought in a duke from France and replaced their Dutch king with a duke from France, because there was this tradition over 10,000 years of human history that it was always that, well, there was somebody was royalty, right? There was either chiefs or there was there was the royal bloodline. There was the folks that ran things in Asia and sultans and whatever you called them. There was a belief. The understanding was that some people were just born to rule over others.
Okay.
And that was that history. Then in 1689, in England, there was what they called the Glorious Revolution, and they overthrew the king there and put in a commoner at that time by the name of Oliver Cromwell. Cromwell ultimately got his head cut off, and then he was replaced by King William, who actually was also originally a king of the Netherlands, and he married Mary, Queen of Scots. And so then they again held a knife to William and Mary's throats and said, you're going to give us these certain kinds of rights. So Jefferson was studying all these things over history to where he's saying, well, okay, how did they tell people what they were going to do? And then he noticed a different pattern. Geez, what we're doing in America is nothing like any of this, because in every one of these other circumstances, we're going to get rid of a king, or these people are getting rid of a king, and all they're doing is getting another king. Right. They're just replacing him with another king. And that's when Jefferson said, oh my goodness, we're doing something entirely different. We are not going to, we're not going to do it that way. And so he did something different. And he did what, lawyers write stuff a lot, for those of you, I'm a lawyer, okay? I'm a former Cook County State's Attorney. I actually used to put people in, back when we prosecuted crime.
Right. Those are the good days.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that. There was a time when we actually prosecuted crime in Cook County, and we actually put bad guys in jail when they did bad things.
Right.
And according to the law, But at any rate, there's something in the way lawyers conduct themselves, or the way they create documents. And they look pretty fancy and official to folks that are not trained in the law, if you will.
Yeah.
But they come out of a form book, right? They come out of a book. So, there's just, if you want to write a will, okay, here's the form. You want to write a deed, here's the form. You want to have, you want to write a criminal complaint, here's the form, and whatnot. So actually, Thomas Jefferson, being a lawyer, opened up his form book. The Declaration of Independence, if you put it side by side with a criminal complaint is in fact the same document. It starts out, of course, when in the course of human events, but a document like this basically has a thing that accuses somebody of a crime. Mm-hmm. It describes the facts surrounding the crime. Then it describes the penalty for committing the crime. Then it describes what the remedy is for the crime that was committed. Mm-hmm. And then it's basically signed by the people who are charging this individual with a crime. The Declaration of Independence starts out with, I skipped something, the first element of it is a statement of the law. And the Declaration of Independence starts out with a statement of the law. The statement of the law is, it is appropriate now for the United States to assume their place among the powers of the world according to the laws of nature and of nature's God. Hmm. That is something that may be among the reasons why government schools do not teach the Declaration of Independence, because that is actually the legal statement for the legal legitimacy of the United States of America. Hmm. That it exists according to the laws of nature and of nature's God. This is the starting place, because, of course, we are now founding a country upon what people call, and we have politicians these days that still refer to the rule of law. We're founding a country based upon the rule of law. The problem with what our politicians say these days is they say, we're going to have the rule of law. They never say the rest of the statement. The rest of the statement is that it's going to be the rule of law and not of men. Mm. Because if it's the rule of men, then you're back to having a dictator, right?
Right.
So to have the rule of law, you have to start at a place. You have to have a legal starting place where the law is higher and is immutable and unchangeable and cannot be changed by men. Okay, if you don't have that starting place, then you don't have the rule of law. You just have some guy saying, let's see, I'm going to forgive student loans today.
Yeah.
Then you don't have the rule of law. You just have some guy going, I think we're going to, forgive student loans. Oh, yeah, you know what? We're going to make people that came across the border citizens. Yeah. I feel like that today, so that's what we're going to do.
Sounds like the Democratic way.
Yeah, and they said they call that the rule of law, mm-hmm. and frankly, that's when you don't have a place where you start that constrains mm-hmm. the actors in the legal system by virtue of the fact that there's a higher power. That's what you wind up with. You wind up with dictators. So this is where Jefferson started.
Interesting.
This is where Jefferson started, and he starts with the statement of the law, and the statement of the law is that. The United States is going to assume its place among the nations of the world according to the laws of nature and of nature's God. There's the next section. But then when you have a criminal complaint, you name a defendant, right? Mm-hmm. King George is the defendant in the Declaration of Independence. Then you have then you name your plaintiffs, mm-hmm. and the kind of things that control the actions of the plaintiffs, and the plaintiffs being the colonists, or the citizens of the various states now, mm-hmm. And of course that's when we come up with the whole situation where the colonists, because what you do with a complaint, and when you're filing a complaint and when you're starting a lawsuit, You paint the one guy, the defendant, as you will, as a terrible, horrible person, right? And then you paint the plaintiff as the good people, mm-hmm. and the good guys. And in terms of painting the people as the good guys, Thomas Jefferson did this. He did a lot of research, and he looked at a lot of writings and stuff that was not from the 1200s and the 1300s, but rather over the last 15, 20 years in the United States. Mm-hmm. And he tried to express what he called the American mind. Thomas Jefferson wasn't trying to convince people of things, but rather he was trying to put into words things they already believed. Mm-hmm. And that's where we came up. That's where we come to in terms of expressing what the beliefs of in this instance, the analogous is the plaintiffs, right? When it comes up to expressing those things, expressing the American mind, that's where we come up with. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that governments are instituted among men to secure these rights, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. This is the second statement of law and a picture of who the plaintiffs are. And so this is how it fits in the form book of a criminal complaint.
Interesting.
And this is where obviously much more elegant and eloquent than you're going to find just about any kind of document you're going to see in a court of law these days. But that's what that was about. And so he put it in there. So this is what he's expressing, the mind of the people, and some of that traces back to. He worked a lot with John Adams. John Adams was the guy that talked him into doing this. And way back in 1760, 16 years before the Declaration of Independence, there was some court cases being held about what they called the writs of assistance. And the writs of assistance were what they called general warrants that were given to agents of the king that allowed them basically to search anybody, anytime, any place, any house, anywhere. And in 1760, some of the colonists went to court over these writs of assistance, and there was a lawyer by the name of James Otis. And James Otis spent about 5 hours in a courtroom explaining why these things did not comport with the rights and history and the rights of Englishmen, and that they were treating Americans different than citizens of England by having these writs of assistance. And in the audience in that courtroom in 1760 was a young guy, his late teens, early 20s, by the name of John Adams.
Interesting.
John Adams was in that, and that changed John Adams' life, the arguments of James Otis, and that's where we went. Do we have to take a break anytime, Roland? Okay.
We have 2 minutes.
All right. Just so we'll talk about the writs of assistance for a minute, and then we can move along a little bit. So Adams had watched all this in 1760, and this was very motivational to his activities in 1775, 1776, and so that's where Adams got some of these ideas was from those arguments, and those arguments were something that Thomas Jefferson was well familiar with, and those are the other things that Jefferson built his ideas upon. And so he collected that, and he collected writings in the newspapers, arguments that were being held in the legislatures around the country, not the least of which is among the more famous speeches from Patrick Henry. But as for me, give me liberty or give me death. So those things, those are the expression of the American mind. Thomas Jefferson distilled that into those 55 words, and what he had going on, and we'll move along to the complaint situation, but what Jefferson had going on is he had a series of different audiences that he needed to write the Declaration for. He wanted to let King George know what everything was about, right? So King George was one of his audiences. He had a group of people in the Parliament that wanted to actually support the Americans. Then he had the American citizens themselves who needed their support. Then George Washington's army, and we're going to do that when we come back.
Absolutely, on Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk. Thank you.
Back to that same old place, a sweet home, Chicago.
Producing your own podcast can be frustrating.
Test 1, 2.
Which is why I'm glad to be introducing the brand new multi-format network. We offer digital media, podcasting, and radio broadcasting professional standard production and syndication. Whether you're looking to bolster and polish your business presentations for a Zoom interview, host your
Wally
podcast, or push your nationally syndicated radio broadcast to a satellite, we can facilitate your every need. So when you're ready to look, sound, and be professional, don't just try to do it yourself. Contact the professionals at the new multi-format network, the Multi-Format Network. From professional syndication to personal vindication, we've got your back. Shoot us an email, mfngeneralmanager@gmail.com. mfngeneralmanager@gmail.com.
And we're going to run again. I'm running currently. Hello, radio listeners. Welcome to WCGO 1590 AM or 95.9 FM. We have a new conservative show on the airwaves, and it's called Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk. I'm your co-host, Pat Gibbons. That being said, I'm going to pass the mic on to my friend and co-host, Wally. Hey, Wally, what do you hear? What do you say?
Hey, how's everyone doing today? We're just going to talk about the future, about Chicago crime and the veterans in Chicago.
Tune in Mondays and Tuesdays from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Conservative Talk Radio with Pat and Wally. Should be a great show. We look forward to your engagement. We'll be talking about safety issues in the city of Chicago, how our veterans need help and assistance, better needed care. And also, too, very importantly, we are going to talk about the Chicago mayor that needs to be called out. I'm Pat.
I'm Wally.
And this is Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk. Tune in to Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk on Mondays and Tuesdays from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., starting June 5th.
It is estimated that 1.5 million people are arrested for DUI every year in the United States. In Illinois alone, over 30,000 motorists are arrested for DUI. Driving under the influence of alcohol, marijuana, or drugs is one of the most complex of traffic charges on the books. Most people do not understand the complexities of the standardized field sobriety tests, which are horizontal gaze nystagmus, the walk and turn, and the one-leg stand test. Due to improper testing procedures, many people are wrongfully charged with DUI. Whether you have been charged with a DUI or an attorney handling DUI cases, the book DUIs Decoded explains the proper procedures for standardized field sobriety testing, breathalyzer testing, and the penalties in Illinois for driving under the influence.
Real estate, be it residential or commercial, is often a person's most significant and priciest asset. Entering into a contract to buy or sell a real estate property is much more than just filling in the missing blanks on the printed contract. It's wise to hire a lawyer to prepare or review the offer to purchase real estate and take full advantage of his legal expertise. With Mark Sheblow, you will gain an attorney with over 26 years of legal practice and one who has helped thousands of clients to buy or sell their homes or investment property. We will safeguard your interests and might be able to even negotiate a better bargain than a client without proper legal counsel ever could. Oftentimes, a prospective buyer will submit an offer without first consulting an attorney, not realizing that once the offer is accepted by the seller, it becomes a binding contract. And the terms of that contract are not easy to be changed afterwards. Likewise, as a seller, you too will benefit from first consulting an attorney before signing. Feel free to call us for consultation at the law offices of Mark Sheblow at 773-775-5050. Our website is sheblowlawoffice.com. Mark Sheblow can be reached 6 days a week at 773-775-5050, Monday through Saturday, located at 5945 North Elston Avenue in Chicago. That's attorney Mark Sheblow, 773-775-5050.
What I want is 2, 6 and 2 is 8.
All right.
Come on, baby, don't you
We're back on Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk with David Shestokas. Thank you, David, for joining us on Happy Independence Day Show.
Thank you.
What happened to the soldiers?
Yeah, well, just before the break, of course, we were starting to talk about the audiences that Thomas Jefferson was writing for when he put the Declaration together. You know? And certainly, like I said, originally it was King George. But at the time that he was writing it, even though they hadn't actually declared independence, George Washington had already been appointed commander of the Continental Army.
Okay.
And the Continental Army was bivouacked or stationed outside of Boston at the time. There was a general thing that Washington referred to as the cause, and there was other things, but there was nothing that tied it all together to give people a reason to go and die. You know, to put their lives on the line for this independence thing. That became part of Thomas Jefferson's goal and part of Thomas Jefferson's job. There was the American people in general, but more specifically, Washington's army sitting outside of Boston in 1776. In June of 76, Washington had been appointed commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. Continental Army essentially was a bunch of militia guys sitting outside Boston because the English, the Redcoats were not very happy with Massachusetts. You know, they'd been dumping tea in the harbor. You know, they'd shot and killed some British soldiers back at Lexington and Concord and stuff. They were not really happy with those folks, and so they actually laid siege to Boston. And so when the army started to be put together in Massachusetts, and they started to recruit people from around the colonies, they came together with George Washington outside of Boston. And on a couple of days after the 4th of July, Washington mustered the troops, and they got together, opened up the Declaration of Independence, read the Declaration of Independence to his troops. Now they had a country. Now they had a cause. Now they had to. Now they had something to die for, something to believe in, the self-evident truths that all men were created equal, that they themselves had the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and so did their families and their kids and whatnot. So now it became important. So this was really one of the missions of Jefferson's writing is to inspire these folks to, in fact, go out and win the revolution, if you will. And it was, and of course, this was 76. The victory was not till 1783. I mean, it was 7-8 long years. It lasted a long time and before Yorktown and Cornwallis. And so it was like 6 years in the field, and then it was a couple more years before they actually signed the treaties. Because, of course, they had to go back and forth from England, and that was a 2-month trip. Right. 4 or 5 months round trip, you know. So they couldn't tweet across the channel or across the North Atlantic. Right. You know, so it was a big deal. So, but at any rate, obviously one of the goals of Jefferson with the Declaration of Independence, in terms of giving the Americans something to die for, something to believe in, something to hang on to, was part of the goal of the Declaration. Obviously, it was pretty darn successful because over the period of the war, either in battle or in prisoner of war ships. When the British did take prisoners, which wasn't very often, mostly they cut people's heads off. I'm serious. Yeah. I'm not joking. More often than not, they didn't take a prisoner; they just cut the guy's head off. Right. But when they did take them prisoner, they had ships out in the harbor outside of both New York and Boston, and they put the prisoners out in the harbors. And more often than not, they just died out there. Whether it was smallpox or some other disease, or vermin and rats infested, living in the bottom of the ships.
That's crazy. How long did it take Thomas Jefferson to write the Declaration of Independence?
It was about 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
It was about 3 weeks that he actually worked on it, from the time he was assigned to it to the time that he was assigned to it about the 9th or 10th of June, and around 29 or 30 of June. He turned it over to the committee. They did a little bit of polishing, and then on July 1st, it got actually presented to the Second Continental Congress. So he was actually, but you know, even though that took 3 weeks, of course, as it turns out, it looks like it was something that Jefferson was preparing for all his life. Sure. You know, he'd written some other documents on British North America and the rights and freedoms of British North America. He was a good writer before that, and so there was some of his own writing, but from the time it was actually assigned to him, there was a committee of 5. We'll go back June 7th, 1776. Okay. a fellow by the name of Richard Henry Lee, who nobody knows, right? You know anything about Richard Henry Lee?
No, never.
No. Richard Henry Lee stood up in the Continental Congress, but he was a guy from Virginia as well.
Okay.
He was from Virginia as well, and he actually was semi-famous for wearing a black glove on his right hand all the time. But he wore the black glove, not like, he didn't wear a glove like Michael Jackson wore a glove. He wore the glove because he was out hunting one day, and his rifle blew up and blew off most of his fingers. And so that's why he wore the glove, because he was missing most of the fingers on his right hand. And in terms of stuff in the book, there's things like that in the book. And I think it's really, really important for people to know that these were flesh and blood people. They weren't statues. They weren't marble. They weren't concrete. They weren't the Monticello on the Potomac that we see when we go to the Jefferson Memorial. They're actual people.
Right.
They're actual people. In fact, Jefferson's mom died about 6 weeks before he arrived in Philadelphia. And he had, in fact, spent about 6 weeks in bed, for the most part, with horrible migraine headaches because he was mourning the death of his mother. And his mom had recently passed before he got to Philadelphia and got this assignment. So this was his first big project after his mother died. And so it was a really emotional period of time for, anybody losing their parents is obviously
of course
a big deal for them. But Jefferson took it especially hard, and he literally, from what I understand, what they say, he did not get out of bed for like 6 weeks. He had these horrible headaches and whatnot, and he had just recently recovered from, or almost began his recovery when they talked him into writing the Declaration of Independence. I don't know. I find these kinds of things fascinating. Richard Henry Lee had his head as he was famous for the black glove, but he lost it because his rifle blew up while he was hunting, and Jefferson was in this melancholy stage because his mom had just died.
It makes you realize how they were thinking at the time. It makes you feel like you were right there with this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just, I think it's just so important because we get caricatures, we get caricatures and rich, white, old slave owners, right? Well, Jefferson was only 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. He had an inheritance and had a place and whatnot, but he was only 33 years old. He wasn't an old guy.
Okay.
There was a committee to create the Declaration, one of whom was John Adams was on the committee. There was a guy from New York and a guy from South Carolina, and then there was Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin, they had originally asked Ben if he would write the Declaration. Ben was one of the premier writers of the time, but Ben was kind of a jokester, and Ben turned down writing the Declaration of Independence, but he did make one really, really important edit during that course of that time, and Thomas Jefferson, we of course now have this famous phrase, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Thomas Jefferson originally wrote, we hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable. Ben Franklin scratched out sacred and undeniable and put in self-evident. And so that edit was crucial to how the document flows and how the document becomes so much more inspirational than sacred and undeniable. They never underestimate the value of a good editor. So Franklin had played that role in that. Also, of course, do you know what the difference is between inalienable and unalienable?
No, I don't.
There is none.
Oh, there you go.
There is none, because when they say inalienable rights, right, or unalienable rights, well, alien is to mean that you can alienate something. That means you can take something away from somebody. To have it be unalienable or inalienable means it can't be taken away, right? But Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin never did figure out what the difference was either. There's something called the first original draft of the Declaration of Independence that's in the National Archives. And in the first original draft, you got Thomas Jefferson's hand. He writes inalienable. Then it's scratched out, and Adams puts over that unalienable. Then that's scratched out, and Franklin puts inalienable again. And then Jefferson puts unalienable again. Those guys didn't figure it out either. So you're in good company, Pat.
It's good to know.
You're in great company with Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin. You know. So we're coming up to a break. Oh, come on in, Wally.
Hi, Wally.
Hey, how's it going? Happy 4th of July, everyone.
Happy 4th of July, Wally. What do you hear? What do you say?
Happy 4th. Having a nice stogie right now.
That's good. That's good to know.
Enjoying the beautiful day.
It's great. It is a beautiful day, Wally.
It is a beautiful day. There's some other guys that probably are having stogie. Sean Thompson is probably smoking a cigar right now. You know, Jim Economos, he's probably smoking a cigar. You know,
that's for the very best.
Cool.
All right, that's a great laugh, Wall. You can let us in on the
joy. You have a question, Wally?
Just saying, how's everyone doing? David, Pat?
We're doing great. I'm getting Pat's being very, very generous and kind, and just letting me rattle on about one of my favorite subjects in the world. You know, the Declaration of Independence and the things surrounding how it got created. And I just wish more people would study it. You know.
What they wrote the Declaration of Independence on hemp paper? Is that correct or no?
My understanding is that's what it was printed on. Yeah, among the Dunlap, what they call the Dunlap broadsheets, which is what broadsheets, excuse me, is what that was. Is what Mr. Dunlap printed it on. Was that on hemp paper? You're right. That's exactly right.
And it's still there.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you for that historical contribution, Wall.
Thank you, Wally.
You can always count on our Polish friend to make some important historical reference. You know, speaking of which, one of these days, you know, Poland and Lithuania once ruled all of Europe, and so one of these days we're going to get together and restore the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Wall.
And their independence, 1791, also May 3rd.
That's exactly right. We have a nice parade in downtown Chicago for Polish Independence Day. I've been in it the last couple of years. I enjoy that Polish Independence celebration tremendously.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Thanks for calling, Wally. I'll see you Monday. All right, buddy.
Thanks, Wally. Have a great holiday.
Happy 4th.
All right.
Hey, take
care.
All
right, so you guys better have your 10 fingers when I come back.
Yeah, unlike Richard Henry Lee, you're exactly right. We're not going to try and blow our fingers off with any rifles.
It's true. Rifles or anything. Everybody be safe out there. Drink and drive moderately.
That's exactly right. That's a great message, Wally, for everybody that's listening. That is going to go out and celebrate later. If you're gonna drive, certainly either drink moderately, not at all, or have a designated driver. And I forgot you're relating 10 fingers to fireworks, not to Richard Henry Lee. So you gotta
Richard Henry Lee also.
Get rid of those M80s and cherry bombs as quick as you can. Right.
Sure. All right. That being said, I'll see you, Wally, on Monday. Thank you for tuning in on Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk. We will be back after this commercial break. If you have any questions, our number is 877-711-5611. Thank you.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go?
Producing your own podcast can be frustrating.
Test 1, 2.
which is why I'm glad to be introducing the brand new multi-format network. We offer digital media, podcasting, and radio broadcasting professional standard production and syndication. Whether you're looking to bolster and polish your business presentations for a Zoom interview, host your podcast, or push your nationally syndicated radio broadcast to a satellite, we can facilitate your every need. So when you're ready to look, sound, and be professional, don't just try to do it yourself. Contact the professionals at the new multi-format network, the Multi-Format Network. From professional syndication to personal vindication, we've got your back. Shoot us an email, mfngeneralmanager@gmail.com. mfngeneralmanager@gmail.com.
Hello, radio listeners. Welcome to WCGO 1590 AM or 95.9 FM. We have a new conservative show on the airwaves, and it's called Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk. I'm your co-host, Pat Gibbons. That being said, I'm going to pass the mic on to my friend and co-host, Wally. Hey, Wally, what do you hear? What do you say?
Hey, how's everyone doing today? We're just going to talk about the future about Chicago crime and the veterans in Chicago.
Tune in Mondays and Tuesdays from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Conservative Talk Radio with Pat and Wally. Should be a great show. We look forward to your engagement. We'll be talking about safety issues in the city of Chicago, how our veterans need help and assistance, better needed care. And also, too, very importantly, we are going to talk about the Chicago mayor that needs to be called out. I'm Pat.
I'm Wally.
And this is Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk. Tune in to Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk on Mondays and Tuesdays from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., starting June 5th.
It is estimated that 1.5 million people are arrested for DUI every year in the United States. In Illinois alone, over 30,000 motorists are arrested for DUI. Driving under the influence of alcohol, marijuana, or drugs is one of the most complex of traffic charges on the books. Most people do not understand the complexities of the standardized field sobriety tests, which are horizontal gaze nystagmus, the walk and turn, and the one-leg stand test. Due to improper testing procedures, many people are wrongfully charged with DUI. Whether you have been charged with a DUI or an attorney handling DUI cases, the book DUIs Decoded explains the proper procedures for standardized field sobriety testing, breathalyzer testing, and the penalties in Illinois for driving under the influence.
Real estate, be it residential or commercial, is often a person's most significant and priciest asset. Entering into a contract to buy or sell a real estate property is much more than just filling in the missing blanks on the printed contract. It's wise to hire a lawyer to prepare or review the offer to purchase real estate and take full advantage of his legal expertise. With Mark Sheblow, you will gain an attorney with over 26 years of legal practice and one who has helped thousands of clients to buy or sell their homes or investment property. We will safeguard your interests and might be able to even negotiate a better bargain than a client without proper legal counsel ever could. Oftentimes, a prospective buyer will submit an offer without first consulting an attorney, not realizing that once the offer is accepted by the seller, it becomes a binding contract. And the terms of that contract are not easy to be changed afterwards. Likewise, as a seller, you too will benefit from first consulting an attorney before signing. Feel free to call us for consultation at the law offices of Mark Sheblow at 773-775-5050. Our website is sheblowlawoffice.com. Mark Sheblow can be reached 6 days a week at 773-775-5050, Monday through Saturday, located at 5945 North Elston Avenue in Chicago. That's attorney Mark Sheblow, 773-775-5050.
All right, we're back on Pat and Wally's Conservative Talk on 1590 AM WCGO or 95.9 FM. If anyone wants to talk with David Shestokas about his great book, Creating the Declaration of Independence, our phone number is 877-711-5611. Again, 877-711-5611. David?
It's it's great to be with you guys today. And bless you and congratulations on this project that you and Wally have entered into. I think you're providing a great service, and I'm honored to have this platform on the 4th of July to be able to talk about the Declaration of Independence. There's just
we were talking before the show about grievances.
Yeah. While we were off the air, we were talking about grievances, and the Declaration, I was talking about the format of the Declaration of Independence, how it matches up with like a criminal complaint. And so you wind up with the defendant, you wind up with the plaintiffs, you wind up with a statement of the law. And then once you have the statement of the law, then you talk about the conduct of the defendant and how the conduct of the defendant violates the law. And there's a list of 27, 28, what you might call grievances. Sometimes they refer to them as grievances, but they're regarding the conduct of King George and how King George took Americans that were accused of crimes in America and would bring them to England for trial. Okay, and that was one of the grievances, is that he would take them out for trial. And this is something else about the Declaration of Independence while I'm thinking about it. Constitution, a wonderful document, does some tremendous things to balance power, separation of power. Brand new, we could do a whole show about what the Constitution is. But what the Constitution really does is to execute the promise of the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution is constructed to right the wrongs that are described in the Declaration of Independence. I just talked about the one thing where George and his people would, somebody was accused of a crime in Boston, right? Right. They would put him on a ship and send him over for a trial in England. Okay, so it was clearly he was not going to have a jury of his peers, right? Because there was no peers in England. He wasn't able to have witnesses. He wasn't. There was nobody for him to cross-examine. He couldn't cross-examine the witnesses against him, and so that was one of the grievances that was listed there. But the answer to that grievance got put into the Constitution, where the Constitution says that a crime will be dealt with by a speedy and public trial in the state and the district where the crime was committed, with a trial by jury of peers chosen from that state and district. So you have a grievance that's described in the Declaration of Independence, and an answer to that grievance in the new government written into the Constitution. Among the other grievances has to do with what they called the writs of assistance dating back to 1760, where they had there was a grievance that the king would give what they called general warrants, and king's agents could go search anybody's house anytime, any place they felt like it. They'd go, oh yeah, I got this thing from the king that says I can come in and I'm going to go search your barn. I'm going to take a look in your house to see if you got any contraband, see if you got any tea that you didn't pay taxes on, and we can do that. The Constitution has, of course, the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment says people will not be subject to unreasonable search and seizure except upon a warrant issued by an independent magistrate based upon probable cause. Okay, so the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, has a answer to the grievance in the Declaration of Independence. If you there is no Constitution without the Declaration of Independence. That makes sense. People don't get that, and this is what we celebrate today. This is what we celebrate today, and people don't know why. Back a few years ago, I was about 10 years ago. In fact, that put me on this mission. I was on Constitution Day. I won't put you on the spot. Constitution Day is September 17th. Because September 17th, 1787 is the day they finished writing the Constitution. Okay, and as an attorney, I went out to a high school in Southwest Florida, American history class, to talk about the Constitution to American history students. And I asked them, what year was the country founded? And they said, geez, 1700. I go, no. After that, no, you go 1800. Took us a while, and they ultimately zeroed in on 1776. I went, wow. I said, maybe I'll ask them something easier. I said, okay, now we got the year. What day was it? We were all over the calendar for quite a while, and then finally I said, hot dogs, hamburgers, parades, fireworks. And everybody goes, oh, July 4th. But they had no idea, and this is a sophomore American history class. Wow. They had no idea that the country was founded on the 4th of July, 1776. This is what we are missing, this common heritage, the kind of thing that binds us together. One of the reasons that it's so insidious when they go to destroy our history or just ignore our history is it separates the glue. It separates us from the glue that is supposed to hold us together. Say bye, Wally.
Hi, Wally, and say bye, Wally.
David, Pat, I got a question for David.
Okay.
All right, what about that flag was yellow with a snake on that? What is that historical point about that flag?
It was called the Gadsden flag, and it was put together. And actually, it was the snake was actually had little pieces cut in, and the little pieces of the snake had, in fact, the names of the various colonies, and it indicated that if you could either be cut into pieces and you would not survive, or you could be a snake and be all together and put together a brand new country, and then you will in fact survive. So it was kind of an early expression of what we now call e pluribus unum, right? From many one. It was an early expression of that thought.
Being live or die.
Live free or die. That's exactly right.
Yes.
But they essentially said, we're going what the way Ben Franklin put it at the signing of the Declaration of Independence is, we're going to all live free, or we will all hang together. Mm-hmm. And so that was an ongoing theme, Wally, for what was going on and how they motivated people, and ultimately, 20,000 Americans would die for freedom. 20,000 would die so we would have today. 20,000 people would die so we would have today. And I think, it's wonderful that we celebrate the people that have protected it in the last 240 years, where we have Memorial Day and Veterans Day and all the folks that have come after. But my God, we have to remember those first 20,000. We have to remember, because without them, we don't have anything.
Same as that movie with Mel Gibson, Patriot.
Yes.
That any regulation, was it true? They got their assassin, the British.
Yeah, that lieutenant in that movie who was so brutal and burning down churches and burning churches with people inside them. He was a real live British soldier. He's based on reality. They were brutal. They were brutal.
Yes, they were.
Thank you, Wally, and happy 4th of July, everybody. Happy 4th of July, Wally. Happy 4th, David. Thank you for showing up on the show.
Thank you so much. Listen, follow me on Twitter, at Shestokas, Shestokas. Follow me on Twitter. We'll talk about all this later on. We're going to continue. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a blessed day, everybody. Take care.
As I throw each one of you.
WCGO 1590 AM, W240EH 95.9 FM, Evanston, Chicago.